Welcome to a Creative Approach podcast with me, your host, Karen Poirier-Brode. Today, my guest is Cheryl Ashcraft. I first met Cheryl on the podcast that I was previously a co-host of, the Digi-Scrap Geek. Cheryl creates wonderful, richly layered, meticulously detailed digital scrapbook templates to help scrapbookers create their own beautiful masterpieces, to tell their stories with no fuss. She takes lots of photos for her own memory keeping. She decorates her home, is an artist who works in pen and ink drawings, and has started experimenting with watercolors and mixed media. She's an avid reader and sometime cross-stitcher. Here's Cheryl's story of her creative approach. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our podcast today. Cheryl Ashcraft is our guest today, and hi there.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing just great. I hope you are too.
I am. I'm doing fabulous.
Wonderful. Well, I was wondering if you could just kind of jump right in, Cheryl, and give us a little lowdown on who you are and what you do for the audience here.
Yeah, my name is Cheryl Ashcraft. I currently create digital scrapbooking templates for scrapbookers, and I do that under the name Fiddle-dee-dee Designs, and you can find those designs exclusively at the Lilypad, and I think it's the -lilypad.com.
Yeah. And they're wonderful designs. And you offer a couple of different kinds of approaches because you have ones that people can add tons of embellishments and then sort of a more pared down approach.
Yes, I have two series, one called Dressed Up, so lots of elements and papers, and the dressed down version, not only pared down as far as elements go, but sometimes less photos and certainly much smaller composition. So it fills up about 30% less of the page, if not more. So that, appeals to two different types of scrappers. And recently I've added in a new line called Color Me Happy, where I'm doing some doodling and converting those to digital. So you can print them out for coloring, or you can add them to your scrapbook pages.
Wonderful. So lots of creative opportunities there. And as far as, scrapbooking or even just getting into art or creativity, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, I know you're in the Eastern time zone right now. Have you always lived where you live?
Actually, in the Central time zone, in the northwest corner of Florida. So we're right at the edge of Florida, Alabama. And I have always lived here in this same little small town my entire life.
Well, that's good.
My mom still lives in the home I grew up in. I did have other addresses. I lived with my dad some. And my husband and I have lived in this home for 20 years now. So, yeah, just a hometown girl, I guess. As far as creativity, I think I can pretty much say that all stems from my mother. She is very creative. She was an elementary school teacher. I really think she should have been an art teacher, but yes, I do. She does teach art. She tutors now, and she has a studio. She was in a gallery for a while, but has pulled out of that now and is just doing, private tutoring. And she works in acrylics, oils. She does pen and ink. She does pastels. Pretty much anything you can think of, she likes. Her foray into oils has been recent in the last couple of years. So prior to that, mostly acrylics for her paintings, and she's done quite a few pen and inks. So as a child growing up, one of the first pieces that I have of hers, my parents had divorced and she did not have a camera at the time. And if she did, she couldn't have afforded film or to have it processed. But she sketched my sister and I playing outside under some oak trees and then completed it as a pen and ink. And it's one of my treasured possessions, but Yeah, so she was always creating something. She's a huge yard sailor, thrifter, so she was always repurposing things and just being creative. So it was, always around. She took some art lessons herself, and my sister and I kind of tagged along. So I remember that as far as, private lessons. I didn't have them myself, but I was learning along with her. And I took art. I didn't take art in high school, but I took it in middle school and, enjoyed it. I kept creating, decorating my home and doing little crafts. I didn't start scrapbooking until my husband and I started dating. And then it was those scrapbooks where you just kind of like a smash book is today, where all the receipts and ephemera and all that,
Right.
you just kind of slam it in. And there was no thought of, acid free or anything like that. It was,
Not a lot of journaling, or did you journal a lot in those days?
just enough to know where I was, where we were, and the date. I did put in when we got engaged, I did have our engagement story, a pretty long thing that I typed up and put in. But when I became pregnant with my daughter, my mom bought a little 8.5 by 11 kit, and, the colors, the elements that were available were just not greatly attractive, but I was serious
There was
about,
a limited selection in those days.
right? But
Limited selection.
I documented my story as I cut everybody's silhouettes out of their
Oh, yes.
the photos.
I remember that.
Yeah, so that was where the scrapbooking started. And then I moved from 8.5 by 11 to 12 by 12. I'd probably say, I guess about 3 or 4 years into my journey, I switched over from 8.5 by 11 to 12 by 12. And then I did that until 2008. And that's when I started exploring editing my photos in Photoshop Elements. I had a little trial, and I started doing some collages and printing my photos out in different sizes for paper scrapping. And then I stumbled across some digi sites, and that was it. I was hooked.
The rest was history.
Yeah.
And as far as fine art, were you doing any of that? I mean, you'd had that influence, you'd learned a bit, you'd kind of dabbled, it sounds like, a bit, but did you pursue that any further after you were done with high school, or?
No, I just continued as an adult. I've done watercolors and pen and ink. I do love watercolor, but I don't care for acrylics or oils, mostly because I haven't mastered them. And so it's not I get frustrated. So it's not a happy creative, but I do love black and white pen and ink. So I love to do sketching, and I love to do, well, it's Zentangling, but it's really just doodles, making a shape and then filling it in. So I do really enjoy that. It's very relaxing.
Now, do you do much drawing on the computer itself with the drawing pad, or do you scan in your drawings? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I just hand draw on paper and then scan that in. And so there's quite a bit of work afterwards to clean everything up, so that it's, suitable for digital use. But I just prefer to create that way, because usually, I do so much already on the computer designing templates, and that's how I also, create my layouts. So I like to be away from the computer a little bit. So that's why I'm still not using my tablet right now, my Bamboo Fun. Actually, my daughter has it right now. She's in school. She's majoring in graphic design. So, yeah.
Another chip off the block here.
Yes. And my son is 11. And if you ask him what he wants to be when he grows up, he will tell you he wants to be an artist. He's extremely talented as far as his, getting perspective right when you're drawing, dimensional objects. He's definitely gifted in that area. My mother even says that, I think we're all a little jealous of him.
So he really has that eye. That's great.
He does.
Awesome.
He does.
Does he have a medium that he likes more than any?
He mostly likes pencil sketching right now. He will go into pen, but he's still, usually when I find, what he's been doing, like he drew a train and then he's working on this 3-panel world. Let me see if I can remember the name of it. It's a floating island, but I can't remember what he calls it. Floating island. So he started out with one piece of copy paper and he added another one. And so now he's up to 3. It's this whole world, and they're very tiny islands, but the detail is incredible.
Oh, wonderful. So you're just enjoying your children's art as well as your own and your mother's. That's great. A whole family thing.
Yes, yes.
Now, in your scrapbooking, when you were scrapbooking, you're basically telling your family story. Is that your main focus, or do you talk a lot about yourself?
I do.
Good.
I do record my family stories, and I think I approach it, I'm not a chronological scrapper. I have unfinished albums, so I jump around from here to there. And
I couldn't imagine the burden of being a chronological scrapper would just depress me.
well, I do feel that the chronological scrapper has the advantage over, the just willy-nilly like I am, in that they can print their albums and know, everything's there and done.
True.
And, I'm really feeling the push to get my pages off my hard drive and into someone's hands. So I've gone about that by I do a lot of scrapping about my pet, my cat, Holly Bell, cat fanatic about her, and crazy cat lady. And so,
oh, you're the second one I've had on the podcast lately.
Well, that's because
that's
cats
wonderful.
Are fabulous. They're just fabulous.
And especially cats,
yeah.
Right?
So I just went ahead and printed out a book, little 8x8 book of the layouts that I've done of her. And I've done an album of my son and just layouts that I had completed, about him. So they're not, this is our whole year, 2015 or 2014, but the content is there to be looked at in a different way, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's one of the fun things about digi-scrapping is that you can print them out in different sizes and put them into digital books that combine different things. So you don't just have your one layout. As much as I love cutting with paper and making a mess, I think it's why I'm sort of do half digi, half paper, but the digital ones have a little easier to reproduce. And
exactly, because there are layouts that have, my son and my daughter in it. And if I was paper scrapping, I would have to choose which album that went into, or either make 2 layouts. This way I can include that layout in both albums if I'm just, separating by child. So they have, they're not missing out on that particular photo or story.
Right. And you can make a little gift book for a family member that includes that particular layout.
Yes. And another thing I've done, which I love about digital, unfortunately in our life, and, it's all coming for all of us, but, having a family member pass away. And my great aunt was the first time I did it, my grandmother's sister. And she had a lot of photos and her sons were not here. And so my mom asked me if I would put something together, and I pulled out, because I keep the PSDs of my files, I pulled layouts that I had already done, converted them to 8.5 by 11 so they fit well on a slideshow, and exchanged photos out and took off journaling and, would sometimes change the title, but in a very short period of time, I had this amazing slideshow that was, completely scrapbooked simply by changing out photos and text.
Which is like a step beyond just using a template. And of course, you create templates, so one can see how you would gravitate to that. And it's just another thought for people who are scrapbookers of a way of using those pages you've done. Don't forget to save the PSD files.
Right. I know.
If you have room. I mean, I have a big 3 terabyte hard drive on my computer, but I think a lot of computers now are coming with a whole lot of space because there are people like us who like to keep different versions of our files and need the storage space.
Yes. And I know some people, once they're printed, they get rid of the PSD file and they just keep their, print ready JPEGs. And that's totally cool. But also think, if you think you may have some projects in the future, why recreate, the wheel? If you have something that you've already made with love, it doesn't take anything away from it if you're going to, put in another photo. And some layouts are just not going to work for that. Depends on, if I had like a space layout or something that I had my son in, that obviously that kind of layout is not going to work very well for, exchanging for heritage photos or whatever, but other layout can work quite well.
Right. And it might have some other use. You never know
down
the road. And then, that brings me to your template designs, which is, of course, what you do as a job right now, a career, is designing templates and beautiful ones. And how did you get into doing that? I mean, here you were, a scrapbooker, moved to the 12 by 12 format and being a traditional scrapbooker, but then moving into doing design, I guess how did that step come about?
I was a creative team member at the DigiChick, and I was creating for a lot of designers. At one time, I think I was creating for over 23 or 24, somewhere around in there. So I was...
Pardon the gasp, but that's a lot.
It was a lot, and I just love to create. And I actually miss that. I miss that, when you get a kit from a designer and you're like, what can I do with this? Or, just waiting with bated breath to find out what they're going to come out with and then create. I loved it. And so I was creating all the time. And I happened to be doing some administrative work at the DigiChick as well. And there was a template designer that had to step out of a guest spot. And so the store owner then asked me if, I could fill in, and I was nervous. I was like, really? You want me? Are you sure? So it was just, it was just supposed to be a little month thing. It was just, like a fun,
right.
I'll
temporary.
Yeah, I'll fill in. And then she was like, okay, wow, you need to keep doing this. And I don't know that I would have kept doing it if she hadn't, said, yeah, you're good at this. You need to, you need to keep doing it. I don't know that I would have pushed, because for me, then it was still I was still such a creative team member. And, honestly, I still struggle with that. I feel more on the creative side than the design side. Does that make any sense? I feel like I'm always more of a scrapper than a designer because I don't know. I just think that way.
But I think your template designs are very creative. I mean, I feel your template designs are very creative. You have, especially on ones where you use a lot of elements, which a lot of people like to do. And sometimes people like to do that, but they're not quite sure how to.
Right.
And your templates certainly make that easy. At least I find them easy to use that way. And I like the simple designs as well, but I really like when sometimes you get a kit and it's just full of really, really cool stuff.
Right.
I recently used one of Lynn Grievison's kits that had tons of gorgeous things in there. And of course, I had to go to Cheryl's template to be able to fully exploit that kit. And of course, I modified things, added an extra picture and things too. I think that's something, your more simplified designs versus the more complex ones do give people more of an idea of how they can change up templates. And,
even the dressed up ones, I always say, because some people feel like, a template restricts them. And I'm like, no, if you need a template that you need 6 photos on the page and you have a template that only has 2, take a look at it and see where you can add your additional photos, you can oftentimes add them in without any problem at all. And some people do struggle with that, where to put it. So I do try to make sure I have, templates that offer multiple photos. But yeah, if you don't want an element or your title in a certain place, I always feel like the template is a place for you to start, as opposed to staring at, a blank page and you're like, where do I even put my photo today?
Oh yeah. I mean, I love playing with templates and moving things around, turning them around, changing up the photos, changing up the position of things. But you're right. When I look at a blank piece of paper, sometimes I can just throw the photo or photos on it and then start to do it. But I think some of us, we all have in the back of our mind how we'd like to do it when we are doing that particular thing. But when you have a template, there's so many now, and you have quite a wonderful variety. You can just go to your library and say, this one of Cheryl's looks pretty darn good. That's what I'm in the mood to start with, and start there versus having to exactly figure out where to put something.
And it's funny because because I do create without using a template. I use my template sometimes, but, in order to continue creating templates, I have to create layouts. So I do find that when I'm, just creating with that blank paper, it's funny that the photos just kind of, once I decide what photos I'm going to use and get them on the page, it's like they dictate where they want to go in a weird way. I don't know how to describe that, but it's like, okay, that's supposed to go right there.
So do you often start with doing a layout of your own and then converting that to a template, or do you actually go fresh in and design a template and then use that? Or do you use both approaches?
Both approaches, especially if it's highly themed. Those will often, just be designed, straight on a blank canvas. A lot of times, though, I'll use photo placement from my layouts in order to start building. If I'm, building with certain pieces, I'm trying to think, like I did some for St. Patrick's Day, and they were just really highly themed. I didn't have any layouts that necessarily fit that, but I used different photo placements from different layouts and then started building with the themed elements from there, the shapes and such.
So you do use themes in some of your designs as well as just arranging things on the page. Some of it has a definite design theme.
Yes. We just did this past weekend, Document Your December. So they were very oriented towards creating and recording your, memories from the holidays. And for some people that, a daily endeavor where they're taking pictures and recording that. And some people, it might be weekly, but, somehow you're recording those weeks leading up to Christmas and then the aftermath between Christmas and New Year's. But yeah, they were definitely.
So some of those designs would have things that look like maybe trees or gift boxes or things like that.
Right.
In the design. Mm-hmm.
Right. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I enjoy doing those as well because I like myself when I get templates and there is a shape that I can add a piece of paper to, and then I can use a kit that maybe isn't a themed kit, but it becomes themed because of the shapes and the composition of the template.
Yeah, that's a fun approach. And so, because I'm a person who doesn't always start with photos. That sounds kind of weird. I know. I actually have like layouts that I do and keep on reserve for, I have ideas in mind, but sometimes, of course, a seasonal one where you can do something that fits a general theme, travel, Christmas, some theme like, out in the woods, that kind of thing, and then just build up a template and then wait to see if I'll have pictures just because I like to play. It's not always that I have some definite objective. Being a non-chronological scrapper, I guess that gives me the liberty to
and
just have fun.
There are times when, I have a story to tell with a photo. It's leaning towards the documented side of creating a scrapbook page where I have a photo but it's really important that I have these words that go along with the photo. And then there are other times, I was just thinking, we were talking about themed templates, and I have a set called Catching Some Z's, and it has like stars and clouds and, some little pre-made, kind of title work that you can put in there. And for that, if I have a picture of my son or daughter, or maybe it's a niece or my cat, I might not have a huge story to tell about that. I would just maybe record the date and, maybe a couple of sentences, but I don't have a huge story to go along with that. So in that sense, I feel like it's more, I could certainly create that layout without having the photo ready. I could create before that. And then depending on the colors, could certainly do a black and white conversion and pop my photos right in.
True. And then we can always recolor our elements too,
if
we so desire. Although there's so many kits now, that's really not, we're not obliged to do that anymore.
No,
but every now and then you want to just get that color right and match your photo better. But, even if you do something ahead of time, you can always tweak things. Photoshop's wonderful that way, isn't it?
It is. It is so fun to be able to, if you're very matchy, then gosh, you can really just tweak things to the, nth degree. I do kind of like, though, sometimes when a color photo doesn't exactly match, it kind of matches.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
It makes it feel
gives
like,
it more emphasis.
Well, and it makes it feel like a paper page. Does that make any sense? Because when I was scrapping, you printed out your photos and then you worked with what you had. So in some sense, that makes me feel like it lends authenticity to the scrapbook page when it's not completely matchy. But girl, I do some photo editing and I pick a kit, sometimes the kit's just like, okay, that photo goes with that kit. It was like the designer was out there and they made it for me.
Oh, that happened to me just the other day. I think I was using the Going Places kit or something, and it was about travel, and I went, oh my goodness, I'm wearing just the right outfit.
Right? And you're like,
it's the right spot for this travel themed. And it was a picture of me in a canal boat in Amsterdam. And I said, oh, perfect. This is working great.
And you're like, are they stalking me on Facebook? Do they know?
This is a really old kit.
Right.
And my recent trip, maybe I had that in mind when I put the outfit on, but I just bought the kit. So, who knows?
Yeah.
It's not really old. I mean, it's still available. But yeah, it is funny how that all does work out. But I think that's just it, that designers, there are so many good designs out there now and so much versatility in the kinds of things that versus when we started scrapping, when there were very limited numbers of supplies.
Oh, yes. And digital was just barely even a thought then,
Right.
Because I was thinking the other day, here I am, I'm doing this job. And, when I try to tell people what I do, I can tell you I design, I'm a template designer. And you're like, okay, I get it. I know who you are because you're in my community. But if I try to tell a stranger or maybe extended family what I do, usually I end up saying a graphic designer and I'm in the scrapbook industry. And I just leave it at that unless they ask more specific questions. And then I'll say, specifically designed for digital scrapbookers and create composition, pages for composition so they know where to place their photos and their elements. And I've even said, like a interior designer comes in and tells you where to put your furniture and where to put, the things on the wall and all your, your lamps and your other pieces. I'm like that person, but I do that with your photos. And the kit that you have, I kind of tell you, okay, here's where you should put this. And, it's similar in that way.
Yeah. And if people who are listening are not familiar with the scrapbook world and not familiar with Photoshop or Photoshop Elements, this program on the computer allows you to not just arrange things on the page, but things are done in what we call layers. so that you can have a background paper and you can put a photo on top of it, and you can put a flower or a swirl or a title in a specific spot on top of that and modify things. Then you can get really complicated and put it on 2 different layers so it looks like it's partially covered by something else on top of one thing, underneath something else that also is on top of something, just like you were fitting things together, and you can work your shadows in. And I'm the kind of person who likes to make my pages look like they're paper pages. Some people like pure fantasy pages or artsy pages and don't necessarily care if they look like they're real or not.
Right.
Real in terms of like paper.
Right.
They're all real. But it's how you want to tell your story. But having these tools and having somebody who designs a template and gives you all those layers so you can figure out where you might want to put your stuff, it can really be helpful.
Yes. And, a lot of my templates include paint and splatters and such in the background. And that's because I do love art journaling and, just creating a page with the pieces from a digital kit. And of course, there are lots of just art journal kits out there, but you really can use a traditional scrapbook kit to art journal. It's like
there aren't many rules in that particular medium.
You just create. And so I feel like that's definitely an influence in my personal scrapbooking for, my family photos, that I enjoy putting that mixed media look onto my layouts.
Well, there's that art background coming in there.
Yeah. I'm like, oh,
for sure.
I have all these splatters and I didn't have to make a mess.
Indeed. Yeah. I mean, it can get kind of messy, but of course, that's one of the funs of paper scrapbooking.
Yes.
Is that you do get to make a mess. Of course, then you have to clean it up later, but whatever.
Yeah. My sister-in-law and niece came over Friday for Veterans Day. They're teachers, so they had off of school, and so we had a little craft day, and there was this project that I've been meaning to do for forever. My mom had gotten a banner from a friend of hers, and the friend had used these silver coasters, like for glasses. And I think my mom said joy, but I had enough of the coasters. I took the, black rubber part off the back of it so it was lighter, and I spelled Mary, and I used little Scrabble tiles, and I used some little like blingy rhinestone kind of things and some papers from a hymn book, and I used twine and lots of ribbon and made this banner. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm dying for Thanksgiving to be over so I can put up my happy little banner.
Oh, it sounds lovely.
Yeah, so I created that, and then I just, because I had, bought this Scrabble game at a thrift store, and so it had the little, I don't even know what they call them, where you put your tiles.
The little rack, the
rack. After I put Mary on the banner, I spelled out celebrate on one and then Christmas on the other. So I can use the celebrate if I want to for someone's birthday or, any other holiday. I can use a celebrate one. And then I just put the little rhinestones. I just scattered a few of them on there. So it's just plain. It's just wooden. But I like to do stuff like that as well. So.
Yeah, I think, the combination of both digital and hands-on stuff can be a lot of fun. A lot of the digital scrapbookers I know don't just do things on the computer. They do other kinds of crafts, or, they may not be doing scrapbooking per se on the, as far as their craft, but they like to have some hands-on projects. I think a lot of people do.
Oh, yeah. I have a C team member, and then there is a Poly creative team member from the Lily Pad. And they will take my templates and actually, add the digital papers, all of that. Then they'll print it out and have the silhouette cut it. And then they put the pieces together with other elements from the paper world, the paper community, and build a layout from there. So I love to see hybrid projects with my templates too. I like that you can do that. Definitely does stretch your stash when you can build something like that.
Yeah, there's just all kinds of fun possibilities. Now, absolutely. I was going to ask you if you had any advice for people who were interested in pursuing a design, career. you yourself had this sort of handed to you and then got a little push, kick in the butt to keep doing this.
Right.
But since you've worked with stores and other designers, do you have any kind of general words for people who might be interested in pursuing this?
I think you really have to love it because for the most part, you're not going to become a millionaire doing this. You can make a decent career out of it, but I think, just like any retail job where the sales are up and down, you have to just inherently love it. So if you're going to be a kit designer, it's such a foreign animal to me from template designing. I think you just really have to love doing that, love creating and putting those kits together. As far as template design, if you're a scrapbooker and you scrapbook a lot, then you're going to just gradually grow till you're, comfortable with page composition and shadows and how to put things together. And if you feel like, template design is your thing, then, start building, maybe create a freebie here and there and see what kind of response you get. Then you can start approaching different stores and, building your way up. And of course, I didn't, the DigiChick is a great store. And I moved from there to Scrap Orchard, and then Scrap Orchard closed and I went to the Lily Pad. So I had to, I worked my way through different stores to get where I am now. But yeah, I just say, if that's your thing, go for it. But ultimately, you're going to have to love doing it to, I think, be not only successful, but to have longevity in the industry.
And do you have any words of wisdom towards people about creativity in their lives who aren't scrapbookers or who don't do design?
Well, I think this applies to, non-scrapbooking, whether it's paper or digital. But I think you should just create something regularly. And even if you don't think it's good, keep doing it. Like when I first started doodling, they weren't very clean or neat, and I wasn't sure, I hadn't found my niche, the way I like to do things, but it took some time before I got to where I am now. So I think my advice is to create regularly and don't be such a harsh critic. Just do it. And then one day you'll discover, hey, I really like that.
Well, I think
quite well.
yeah, the whole idea of just trying something and, pushing at it and seeing when you like it to keep going. I think that's great advice.
And also YouTube. I mean, please, if you're wanting to find something to create, I have experimented with a lot of different mixed media products. Simply because I saw something on a YouTube video and I was like, I need that tool. I need that. Or I need, I want to make, cards and I need to make that background. So I need that brayer and I need to spread my paint this way. And so you can get lots of great ideas from YouTube. There's just a wealth of resources out there for learning and just discovering new things to create.
Yeah, I wanted to do a acrylic painting once, and I just found this. I said, that's kind of cute. And the person just took you step by step through it. When I was done, I said, not bad.
Right?
It's amazing how simple, some things can be when people take you through it step by step. And then you go, I don't know that I could do that on my own, but that sure turned out nice following somebody.
And,
on this.
It's just the content that's out there is just fabulous. And I do record my scrapbooking process almost every time I create. Not every time, but almost every time. So I do have a YouTube channel called Watch Cheryl Scrap. So I have, if you're interested in watching how a page is put together, then you can certainly give that a watch. But there are not so many other digital scrapbookers that I know of that routinely make process videos, but there are a lot of paper scrappers that make them, and I find them inspiring to watch their creative process.
Well, speaking of places that you could be found, why don't we just review the different places where people can go to find Cheryl Ashcraft?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think I'm everywhere. I feel like I'm everywhere most of the time. Well, you can find me on my website, and that is fiddle-dee-designs.com. And you can find me on Facebook, and that is just fiddle-dee-dee designs, no spaces. I'm also on Twitter, and you can find all of these links if you get to my website, then you can find all of the links there. But it is fiddle-dee-dee design, but design is DZN at the end for Twitter.
Okay.
I'm also on Pinterest, so I have lots of things there, and that's fiddle-dee-dee on Pinterest. And let's see where else.
Instagram?
Yes, I am on Instagram as well. It is fiddle-dee-dee designs, and there's no dashes or anything. It's just straight fiddle-dee-dee designs. So,
okay. And we can buy your products at the Lily Pad.
Right. You can buy them at the Lily Pad, and that is the-lilypad.com.
And we can also watch you on Watch Cheryl Scrap on YouTube.
Correct.
Great.
Yes.
I hope we've covered most all of them, and we can always go to your blog and follow up on anything else that might come along in the social media world, I'm sure.
Yeah, and there's a contact button at the top. So if you have any specific questions that you want answered, you can either send me a message or post on my Facebook page, or you can send me an email.
Well, thanks so much for being our guest today, Cheryl. Have enjoyed this enormously, and thanks to everyone for listening.
Oh, it was fabulous being with you, and I always love to talk about creating. So anytime you want to talk, I'll chat.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, listeners, for being with us at the podcast today. Please visit our webpage at www.acreativeapproachpodcast.com, where you will find show notes for this and other episodes and our social media links. I hope you will join us in future conversations as we explore a creative approach.